Ya sama aku. Hong kololodro, hong si jim setan perayangan.
Wahai kaumku, kalian telah berpaling dari Tuhan.
Before we start, I know you all love horror, so check out this new horror game coming soon to Steam, The 18th Attic. It's a psychological horror game where you're trapped in a loop inside an attic, and your goal is to catch anomalies and paranormal activity by taking pictures of anything that seems strange. Each picture reveals a new memory, but if you fail to capture the right ones, be careful, because they will come for you. Wishlist it on Steam now and join the Discord server. The links are in the description and the pinned comment.
No.
Start of the movie, a man named Linga is shown placing a pot in front of Abba's photo. He then opens a book, takes a key from his pocket, and places it inside the book. Afterward, he uncorks a bottle when suddenly, the lights begin to flicker. Confused, Linga calls out for Abba, but when he gets no response, he starts pouring a drink from the bottle when the lights abruptly go out. Perplexed, he steps outside, calling for Abba, and while searching, he hears rustling in the bushes. Linga enters the bushes cautiously, looking for Abba, when he notices a figure darting from one side to the other. Alarmed, he moves forward and is shocked to see blood dripping from a leaf. He rushes ahead and stumbles into an open area, only to find Abba's lifeless body lying there. Terrified, Linga cautiously approaches Abba, and as he reaches out to touch him, Abba's head suddenly detaches from his body, leaving Linga in utter shock. 12 hours before Abba's death, Ainun is performing an exorcism on Rini. Rini pulls out a dagger, startling Ainun, and Rini begins laughing, saying, "You claim to be invincible, yet you're scared of a dagger?" Vegas, who is recording the scene, agrees and hands Rini the camera, telling them to stop playing around. Ainun says they are practicing how to cast out evil spirits, just like Abba does. To which Vegas says, "If you truly want to cast out evil, you should rely on prayers, not this." Ainun rushes to the boarding school and switches on the TV, where an exclusive report about Abba's hermitage is being broadcast. The report reveals that Abba's hermitage has been established for nearly 15 years in Bumi Suwang village, founded and led by Mulyono Satya, also known as Abba. The broadcast then shows Abba performing an exorcism on a woman, and Ainun tries to mimic his movements. Uncle Booty comes out and switches off the TV, saying, "It's almost prayer time, and why are you still watching something so useless?" Ainun stands up and approaches him, saying, "It's not useless. Abba is helping people." She adds, "You always look down on me for watching Abba," then turns the TV back on. Booty tells her, "I'm leaving now, and don't be late to the prayer room," before walking away. Meanwhile, a girl asks her father, "Why are we here? You said you were going to earn some money." To which he explains, "This is the only place where I can get it." She asks, "Who are you getting it from?" But just then, Linga invites him inside. The man turns to his daughter and says, "Wait here," telling her that we're going to be rich. While her father is inside, the girl wanders off and eventually reaches a mosque. She begins cleansing herself in preparation for prayer, but suddenly notices someone's feet in front of her. However, when she looks up, no one is there. Abba instructs the man to place some money in a box, and then put his hand on it. Abba grabs his dagger and begins reciting a prayer, and after some time, he suddenly stabs the man's hand with the dagger, causing him to scream in pain. Abba continues his prayer and sprinkles water on the man's hand, shocking him as the wound heals instantly. Abba then tells the man to open the box, and as the man lifts the lid, he is overjoyed to see it filled with money. Overcome with greed, he asks Abba if he can have more, to which Abba replies that it is possible and asks, "Have you prepared the sacrifice?" Meanwhile, the man's daughter is praying, unaware of a demonic entity stands silently behind her. She bends down in prayer, and when she rises, the entity is much closer. That evening, Rini tells Ainun that she forgot to buy a pad, explaining that she's on her period. Ainun suggests they go back and get it, but Rini tells her to wait there, assuring her that she'll go and get it quickly. As Ainun waits, the lights begin to flicker, and when she looks around, she hears someone calling her name. She spots a figure in the darkness, standing at a distance, and as the figure moves closer, Ainun is shocked to see that it's Abba. He tells her, "You will turn to me," and to her horror, she watches as he decapitates himself, saying, "A head for a head." Just then, Rini returns and asks, "What happened?" But Ainun, still in shock, is unable to speak. When Ainun returns home, she finds Booty talking to someone on the phone, and at that moment, the TV report broadcasts the news about Abba's mysterious death. It is then revealed that Abba is Ainun's father, and Booty explains that before her mother passed away, she brought her here and asked him not to let her get close to Abba. Ainun stands up and says, "If only you had told me the truth, I would have known what it feels like to have parents." She adds, "All this time, I've been sneered at for being an orphan, raised by the boarding school's caretaker." Booty replies, "I only did what your mother asked, and I never touched any of the things your mom left behind for you." The next morning, Ainun, Rini, and Begas set off to attend Abba's funeral, and Rini asks, "How come Abba never tried to find you?" Ainun explains, "Booty even lied and said my father had already passed away, so he must have told Abba that I wouldn't meet him." After a while, Ainun spots the demonic entity, but when she asks Begas, "Did you see that?" he responds, "See what?" Finally, they arrive at Abba's house, where Linga approaches Ainun and introduces himself as Abba's apprentice. He tells her that she is welcome to see the body and pour water on him if she wishes. As Ainun follow Linga, Rini asks Begas, "Why is he letting Ainun bathe Abba?" To which Begas says, maybe they have different religious rituals. Linga leads Ainun to her father's lifeless body, and as she looks at him, she notices a mark on his arm, and she realizes the same mark is on her own arm as well. After this, Ainun begins bathing Abba's body, and standing nearby, there is another woman present, observing the ritual. As they bury Abba, the people of the village are crying deeply for him. Linga begins reciting prayers, and hearing it, Rini asks Ainun, "Why does his prayer sound so weird?" To which Ainun replies, "I have no idea." Later, Linga tells Ainun to come with him to the hermitage, as Abba left something for her. He then informs her friends that he only needs Ainun, and they can leave. Ainun asks the woman if they can stay here for a while, to which the woman approaches her and introduces herself as Ajeng, Abba's third wife. Linga requests Ajeng to let them stay for the night, and she agrees. At the hermitage, Ainun asks Linga, "What kind of man was my father to have ended up like that?" Linga doesn't respond to her question, and instead tells her to wait there, before going inside to get something. As Ainun waits, an entity appears behind a curtain. Ainun turns and cautiously moves towards it, but when she pulls back the curtain, no one is there. She lets go of the curtain and turns to leave, but the entity reappears and calls out her name. Startled, Ainun turns, and suddenly the demon attacks her. But just then, Linga returns, and Ainun finds that no one is around her. Linga approaches Ainun with a book and tells her that it's from Abba, meant for her. She takes the book, and Linga explains that Abba wanted her to follow his path and take care of the hermitage. He tells her that if she wants to know more about him, she must follow this path, and only his own flesh and blood can walk it. Ainun asks, "What path?" To which Linga replies, "In the last third of the night, I will take you to Abba's secret place and guide you so you can learn more about him." Meanwhile, Begas enters the prayer room and is about to give the azan when Linga interrupts, telling him that they don't perform prayers here. Begas asks, "Why?" To which Linga responds, "I hope you can respect the traditions here." he adds. If you want to pray, you can do it alone. Bagas begins his prayers, but gets shocked to hear Abba's voice saying, Amen. Startled, he pauses for a moment, but then he continues his prayers. As he bends down, he hears Abba's voice again and freezes in terror, and to his horror, he sees Abba's head next to him. Bagas closes his eyes and continues praying, and after a while, when he checks again, nothing is there. However, when he looks up, he is shocked to see that he is now facing the opposite direction. Later, Bagas tells Rini that this place is strange, explaining that they wouldn't let him recite the azan, and when he performed his prayers, his direction changed. He adds that since they arrived, they haven't heard the azan being called at all. Rini agrees and asks, then why do they have a prayer room outside? To which Bagas responds, maybe the building was used for that purpose before, but an evil spirit came and took control of the place, turning people into unbelievers. He then asks, but what do they worship? And Rini replies, Abba. She continues, don't you see? People kissed Abba's body and bumped into each other to touch him. Just then, Ainun enters the room, smiles at them briefly, and goes straight to her room. Rini follows her, asking, is it the same as it is on TV? But Ainun doesn't respond. Rini grabs her camera and asks, are you as invincible as Abba now? Ainun remains silent, prompting Rini to set the camera aside. And after that, she accidentally cuts her finger with a nail clipper. She rushes to Ainun, jokingly calling her Abba and asking her to cure the wound. Ainun takes her hand and says, believe in me. She then begins reciting the same prayer that Abba used to say. Meanwhile, Bagas sees Ajeng going into a room and overhears her telling someone to eat and stay in the room afterward. After she leaves, Bagas quietly moves to that side to check and peeks inside the room, but he doesn't see anyone there. Suddenly, Ainun appears, startling him, and he's shocked to see her. She asks, what are you doing here? And where's Rini? Bagas rushes to Rini and asks, weren't you just with Ainun? Rini is shocked to see Ainun with him, and horrified, she rushes to check her camera, only to find that she was alone all this time. She tells Bagas that wasn't Ainun and says they must leave immediately. Bagas suggests they leave tomorrow after the morning prayer, and when Ainun asks, what's wrong with you guys? Bagas insists they return to the boarding school, saying Booty must be worried, but Ainun refuses, explaining Linga wants to teach her about Abba's path. When Bagas asks to see the book to ensure it aligns with Islamic teachings, Ainun defends it as her father's path and says they can leave if they want, as she doesn't need their company. We then see a boy named Remat, who calls Ajeng mom and asks, why is Ainun here? And did Linga plan something? Later that night, Ajeng's comforter automatically slides off the bed. She wakes up and sits up, noticing it. And as she does, she sees someone sitting on the floor, covered in her comforter. Cautiously, she approaches to check and discovers it's Ramat, who tells her to come in. She enters and asks what happened, to which Ramat responds, Abba was here. Ajeng peeks out, only to be shocked by the sight of Abba moving towards them. She turns to Ramat, but confronted by the demon, and in terror, she wakes up from the nightmare. Meanwhile, at Abba's secret place, Linga tells Ainun that she needs to understand the weight of her responsibility, as she is Abba's flesh and blood. He then approaches her with a dagger and suddenly stabs her hand, then her feet, before telling her to repeat after him. He begins reciting a prayer, and, in pain, Ainun repeats after him, triggering a vision, showing Ramat crying while holding Abba's head. Ainun then opens her eyes and is horrified to see a demon licking her blood. Later, Ramat walks to the window, where Ainun looks at him and gives him a sinister smile. Linga takes her around the village, reciting that the blood sticks to this land will make all the souls on this land turn towards you. Ramat confronts Bagas and tells him that the evil spirit will enter Ainun's soul, just like Abba's. Bagas asks, who are you? But Ramat asks, can you recite the azan? He adds, if you want to understand what happened to this place, recite the azan in this village. Bagas starts reciting the azan from the prayer room, and upon hearing it, Ainun starts having pain in her ears. Along with this, Linga's daughter's health also starts deteriorating. And not only this, all the people in the village who had taken help of Abba's black magic started falling ill. Suddenly, Bagas begins choking, and a handprint appears on his throat, as if someone is strangling him. Rini rushes to Ainun to check on her, while Bagas collapses after finishing the azan, blood pouring from his mouth. Ainun and Rini reach Bagas and ask if he is okay, to which he replies, "Something is very wrong here," and suggests they must pray together. Bagas and Ainun begin praying, while Rini sits outside, unable to pray due to her period, and Ramat watches them from a distance. Suddenly, they hear a noise, and to their horror, they see Anon crawling on the beams. Frightened, they try to wake her, and as Ramat comes running there, Ainun turns to him and leaps onto him. She attempts to strangle him, and Bagas and Rini try to pull her off. But just in time, Ajeng arrives and pushes Ainun aside. Ajeng checks on Ramat and tells Ainun to stay away from her. However, when Ainun regains consciousness, she asks, "What did I do?" The next day, Linga and the villagers confront Bagas, asking why he recited the azan, claiming it disturbed everyone. He tells Bagas that if he cannot respect their way of life, then he should leave. Bagas responds that they will leave, but Linga tells him that Ainun will stay while they both leave. Ainun tells Ajeng that she needs to understand what is happening, to which Ajeng reveals that Ramat is the child of Abba's second wife, and for the past 5 years, she has been taking care of him. She explains that Ramat's condition has been kept hidden because Abba was unable to heal him. Ainun asks why, and Ramat responds, "Children are the curse, while the partners are the sacrifice." He continues, "My mom passed away not long after I was born, and nobody saw her body. And your mom had the same fate as mine." Ainun asks, "Who killed Abba?" To which Ramat replies, "Do you think you can find the answer here?" And adds, "Our Abba was not a decent man." Ainun's expression suddenly changes as her nose starts to bleed, and she tells Ramat, "None of this is wrong, but you are." Later, Rini knocks on Ainun's door, saying, "Let's go home," but she doesn't open the door. Bagas wonders aloud, if the people here can't bear the azan, what about the people outside this village and Abba's followers? To which Ramat says, "The people in this place are bound by an oath, unlike outsiders." Ramat shows them his research papers, explaining that being isolated allowed him to secretly investigate Abba. The older he got, the more curious he became about where Abba got his power from. He reveals, Abba worshipped an evil spirit that was the source of his power, and after Abba became their leader, everything changed. The villagers stopped depending on God and placed all their faith in him instead. Ramat leads them to the hermitage, where he retrieves a basement key hidden inside a book and hands it to Bagas. He then guides them to the basement door, and Bagas unlocks it with the key. As Bagas steps inside, Ramat tells Rini that I can only take you this far. Rini follows Bagas downstairs and turns on her camera to record everything. She sees him entering a room and calling out for him to wait. She rushes in, only to find that Bagas is no longer there. She then records a painting in front of her, lifts the cloth, and uncovers a painting of Abba holding a rosary in his hand. Scared, she turns around, but suddenly, the sound of rosary beads scattering on the ground draws her attention back, and as she turns, she finds that the rosary is no longer in the painting. Through her camera screen, Rini notices a figure shrouded in a cloth sitting nearby, something not visible to the naked eye. The figure begins to levitate, and Rini, terrified, watches as it hovers in the air. Suddenly, the figure lunges at her, but just then, Bagas comes there and asks if she is all right, and when Rini looks back, the cloth is once again draped over Abba's painting. Bagas leads Rini to another door and says he believes there's something behind it. He peeks inside and wonders aloud how they'll open the lock. Rini pulls out a safety pin and hands it to him, and Bagas manages to pick the lock, but as the door opens, a hand suddenly grabs his wrist. Rini desperately tries to pull him, and after calling on God's name, Bagas finally breaks free. The two of them sprint away in terror, but as they reach the gate, it slams shut. They frantically try to open it, and after a moment, the lights flicker, and when they turn around, they are horrified to see several entities behind them. Bagas starts reciting prayers, his voice steady despite the tension, and after a tense moment, the gate opens, and they flee, leaving the camera behind. Meanwhile, Ainun is wandering in the village, and some people are following her. Linga's wife notices this and rushes to him, reporting what she has seen, and Linga responds, "It is time." concerned, she says. But she is different from Abba, to which Linga replies, she was different from Abba, and explains that Abba emptied himself to walk that path. But Ainun came to it whole. A woman approaches Ainun with a glimmer of hope in her eyes, and taking the woman's hand, Ainun says, "Believe in me." She then raises her hand, mimicking Abba's gesture, and begins reciting the same prayer Abba used to say. Then, with a single stroke, she fixes the woman's arm, and witnessing this, the villagers become convinced that Ainun is now their god. Ramat hurriedly approaches Ajeng and tells her that the evil spirit has returned. He explains that Linga wants Abba's legacy to continue and admits they were wrong because it will never truly end. Meanwhile, Bagas tries to wake up Ainun, claiming she and the villagers are controlled by an evil spirit. Ainun declares they need her, and Linga tells the villagers that he and Ainun will restore the village through Abba's path. The villagers agree, and Linga orders them to stop any interference. Bagas and Rini decide they will leave to seek help, and when they go to grab their bags, they discover that Ramat and Ajeng have already left. Meanwhile, Linga performs the ritual once again, and as he stabs Ainun's hand, her eyes turn demonic, flashing a vision in which she sees Ramat and Ajeng dragging Abah's severed head and his body into the field. Here, Ramat and Ajeng are leaving the village when suddenly the demon passes in front of Ramat. Ajeng urges him to keep walking, but as she turns, the demon drags him away. Now Ramat and Ajeng both separate and start looking for each other. And during this, Ainun suddenly lunges at Ramat and says, "A head for a head." In a flashback, Ajeng confronts Abba, saying his son was right, and she can no longer be part of this. Abba insists she can't leave, but she says she knows that once she gives birth, she'll become nothing more than a sacrifice, just like Ramat's mother. As she begins to leave, Abba stops her, throwing her aside. He then strikes her, causing her to fall to the ground, and then proceeds to strangle her. In desperation, she grabs a dagger and stabs him in the neck. But as she tries to flee, she's stopped again by Abba, who attempts to kill her, and in a desperate attempt to save her mother, Ramat attacks, decapitating Abah. Ainun attempts to attack Ramat, but Ajeng intervenes and gets herself stabbed. She pushes Ainun away and urges Ramat to run, and as Ainun moves to chase him, Ajeng stops her, grabbing her leg. While running, Ramat bumps into Bagas, and when Bagas asks what happened, Ramat tells him that they must help his mother. They rush to the spot, but to Ramat's shock, his mother is nowhere to be found. They return to the hermitage, where they find a note in a book that says the only ones who can kill the mediums of this evil spirit are their descendants or those sharing the same blood. Ramat says he knew it, explaining that's why he was able to kill Abba while Ajeng could not. Rini suggests that means Ramat must kill Ainun, but Bagas disagrees, insisting there must be another way. He checks the book again and says they must recite the azan in this place, adding that no wonder Linga kept forbidding it. Meanwhile, Ainun drags Ajeng, covered in blood, and calls out to Ramat, demanding he come out before she kills his mother. The three of them comes out, and as Ramat rushes to his mother, Bagas and Rini stop him. Ainun asks how it felt to help his mother kill his father, to which Ramat responds, Abba killed his wives, turning them into sacrifices, and that he was not human. Ainun moves to attack, but Ajeng grabs her leg, causing her to fall. Enraged by this, Ainun picks up a stone and smashes it into Ajeng's head. Bagas rushes to stop her, and some villagers help him in restraining Ainun. They tie Ainun to a tree, and Linga urges her to control herself. He tells her that she must overpower the demon like Abba did, because they all need her, and they need her to curse them all. Ainun's expression suddenly changes, and a handprint appears on Linga's throat, choking him. The villagers watch in terror as Linga rises into the air, and Ainun then uses a spear nearby to attack Linga, finally killing him. The demon then declares that Ainun belongs to it, and no human will ever overpower its kind. In response, Bagas begins reciting azan, causing the demon to scream in anger. Despite the pain, Bagas continues, even as his throat begins to hurt, and blood starts pouring from his mouth and ears. The demon, using Ainun's voice, tells Bagas that it hurts. But Bagas persists with the azan, and suddenly, the screams of many people echo from the basement. Bagas tells Rini to watch over Ainun and instructs the villagers to follow him. He leads them to the door in the basement, and as they enter, they are shocked to find several bags hanging from the ceiling. They cautiously move the pots aside, and Bagas tells one of the men to open a bag, and to their horror, a dead body falls out. They open more bags, and with each one, more dead bodies tumble out. The demon tells Rini, "They are all sacrifices of those who gave their souls to me." Rini asks, "What do you mean?" And just then, a man shouts, "There are many bodies here." Suddenly, the lightning flashes and Rini sees that Ainun has disappeared from there. Meanwhile, Bagas and the others are untying the corpses when suddenly the lights flicker, distracting them. And when they turn around, they are horrified to see the corpses kneeling down and Ainun standing outside. The demon's voice echoes, "You have turned away from God, and so you will continue to face me." It then forces everyone to kneel in front of it, laughing at their helplessness. However, Bagas and Ramat begin reciting the azan, and the villagers start following them. The demon grows weaker with each word, falling to the ground and writhing in pain. After a while, they all break free from the demon's clutches, and Bagas rushes to Ainun, who, with a pained expression, says, "It hurts." Bagas tells everyone that they must repent and return to the right path. Everyone gathers in the mosque and begins praying, while Rini sits outside due to her period, but continues to read her tasbih. Suddenly, the tasbih breaks, and its beads roll toward Ainun, and Rini is terrified as she sees Ainun possessed again. She rushes to Ainun, trying to wake her up, urging her to remember God. However, the demon grabs Rini by the throat, and Abba's voice tells Ainun to believe in him. The demon lifts Rini into the air, but Ainun, struggling with the demon, declares that she doesn't believe in Abba, but only in God. Finally, Ainun manages to defeat the demon and collapses, releasing Rini. The next day, all the corpses are taken out from the basement, and later, Ajeng is buried with full rituals, honoring her memory and the sacrifice she made. Ainun decides to stay in the village, hoping to help guide the villagers onto the right path, and she also needs to take care of Ramat. She thanks Budi for raising her and teaching her the right values, and he tells her to take care. Bagas then comes out and hands Budi a book, asking if he could take it to the Kiai at the boarding school, as he wants to ensure that all the evil is put to an end. Rini tells Ainun that she will visit often when the holidays come, and Ramat asks Bagas if he is staying there, and tells him to teach him how to recite the azan, as well as to teach the villagers to recite the Quran and pray. Bagas agrees, and then Rini and Budi leave, bringing the movie to an end. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the chills, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a scare. Until next time, stay spooky.